Hey gang, what's up? It's Wes. So I've been playing with a brand new software. Something that it's either just come out or not quite come out yet publicly, but I was part of the early access, not the beta, but the early access release for the new ArtRage Vitae, which is going to be replacing ArtRage 6. And I just wanted to do kind of my general impressions, not a review. I haven't had enough time yet to do a full-on review. We're going to do that probably a few months down the line. I still want to play around with some stuff, but I wanted to kind of break the software in while also working on something for my portfolio. So I've recently done a full landscape series of 5 landscapes inspired by all of the landscapes in Magic the Gathering. So there's 5 different mana types. Each of them have a basic land that you play. And I wanted to do landscapes in that style, inspired by each one of the mana sources. So the one you're going to see today is actually going to be the mountain, which is red mana. And I'm just trying to level up and trying to get to that level of, being able to go to Wizards of the Coast and be like, look at my stuff. Can I make some art for, Magic or Dungeons and Dragons or, kind of the moody atmospheric landscape fantasy stuff. So we tried our hand at some of that. But I did want to tell you that all 5 of these are actually on sale right now. I have them on my print shop. I'll have a link to that in the description below. But I wanted to break in ArtRage Vitae, kind of see how it feels in a comparison to ArtRage 6, and see kind of what our thoughts were. But I also wanted to really capture that moody atmosphere of a landscape. So in honor of that, we're going to do something a little bit different. I was actually listening a lot to the Witcher 3 soundtrack whenever I was painting all of these, just to try to get my head in the right headspace. So what I'm going to do is we're actually going to look at a little compressed, like 2.5 minute long ArtRage painting session. The time lapse basically that you're going to see over the course of like 20 minutes, actually compressed down to about 2.5 minutes, to one of the songs that I was listening to on repeat to try to get you in that mood and that headspace as well. Then we're going to do our general like 20-ish minute breakdown, talk about some of the tools, some of the features, maybe some of the bugs that I found, if they've resolved them or not, like things like that. So just kind of stretching out, getting a feel for what we have for ArtRage Vitae so far. But I thought it'd be kind of fun, kind of a celebration of the mood and the atmosphere to kind of set the tone and set that mood early by sharing that with you all. So without further ado, let's get in there. Let's kind of get in that headspace of painting epic fantasy landscapes. And I hope you enjoy this quick, moody time lapse before we get started with our narration. But yeah, nothing else to be said. So I'll see you in a minute. Enjoy. All right, here we go. Yeah, man. Oh, that Witcher 3 soundtrack just mwah, chef's kiss, man. That's what I always like to do. I'm a big mood painter. I like to kind of set the mood and all that stuff. Just to mentally get. I like to like transport to the place that I'm trying to paint, if that makes sense. I know it sounds kind of hoity-toity, but it is what it is. Everyone has their own method to kind of get the results that they're looking for. And speaking of getting results that you're looking for, yeah, let's talk a little bit about ArtRage Vitae. So, this is not a full review. I'm gonna wait a while before I do the full review. This is still kind of early access. I think if ArtRage Vitae is not out yet, it will be soon. So it has been out for mobile devices. They've done the update on mobile. Ambient Designs has gone ahead on their mobile side and done that. So if you go and look for ArtRage in the store on your mobile devices or iPad and all that stuff, you should find Vitae on there. I haven't used the mobile one. This is actually for Windows. That's what I'm using here. And it's ArtRage, man. I was a big fan of ArtRage 6, and I think this just continues the trend. So something that you're gonna notice if you go back and look at my ArtRage 6 review kind of video, the one where I do the Turian sketch, I have a different layout. I use the default ArtRage layout for that piece, but something that I notice here, and it sounds weird, but I don't even know if the functionality exists in ArtRage 6 to customize your UI in this way. Maybe. So I don't want to just claim that this is a brand new feature. This is probably an old feature that I just never used because, the default ArtRage setup kind of had everything I needed. But with ArtRage Vitae, I was like, okay, if this is a brand new version of ArtRage and I'm able to kind of customize a UI and dock things on the left or the right, keep the canvas in the middle, I'm going to set it up to be similar to my, Krita or Clip Studio or Photoshop, setup. And, you basically have your brush menu on the left and maybe some tool options and stuff on the left. And then on the right, you're going to have something like your navigator, be able to see your stuff at a zoomed out or zoomed in level, your color wheel, of course, and then your layers panel. It's just the way I like to work. It's the setup I'm used to, I'm the most comfortable with. But coming in from ArtRage 6 to ArtRage Vitae, not a lot is different. I do realize that it's snappier. This new ArtRage so far is a little snappier from what I'm seeing. I will say that I did run into some bugs, but Ambient Designs have been super fast on the take, and I think I did like 2 bug reports, and both of them were solved within 48 hours. Like, they've been updating this a lot, and like I said, I don't know if the launch is official yet, but it should be out soon. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing quite like the thick, flat brush engine on ArtRage and palette knives and things like that. And I think doing a landscape like this, especially a mountain, something with a lot of sharp edges, rocks, blends of different values, that's why I wanted to really do this. And all of the landscapes that I did, this whole 5-set series, I did the preliminary sketch in ArtRage because I wanted the happy accidents of how colors are blending together and the different textures of the brushes and how they interact. It's always very important to me. I think that adds a lot of life to a painting. You have 2 trains of thought when it comes to painting. Either painters that really want to hide their brushstrokes, they don't want you knowing you're looking at a painting. Not necessarily that what they're making is photorealistic, but they want to transport you and they don't want you thinking about anything else but what's on the canvas. Do you know what I mean? Like, they really want you into that mood or that, scene or whatever they've painted, that portrait. They don't want you noticing the brushwork. They want you noticing the subject. And I fall probably more so on the other end of the spectrum, to where I want you to know that this is painted. I want you to know that, yeah, there was a hand that crafted this. You know what I mean? Like there's an artisanal feel of this. And ArtRage Vitae, delivers the same way ArtRage 6 did. There's other programs like Rebel that do the same thing, do it as well. Maybe some ways better, maybe some ways not as good. But that's neither here nor there. I think I have had a lot of requests to do an ArtRage versus Rebel like face-off video, which seems kind of combative. It's like we're all family here. We're all in it together. But just people really want to know, hey, which one is the one to choose? And that actually brings me to a little point, and I promise we'll talk more about ArtRage Vitae in a minute. But use the right tool for the job. Use the right tool for the job. I do the preliminary color blocking, value sketch, shape language, design, composition stuff in ArtRage for these landscapes, because I think that's what it does best. I think pushing and pulling paint really feels better in ArtRage than in something like, Clip Studio or Photoshop. However, what you're going to notice is once I get to a certain point on this, I move over to Photoshop, because then I'm in my quote-unquote post-production mode. And really, there's still nothing quite like Photoshop for being able to edit post-production, photo editing type of, you know what I mean? Like, that's its bread and butter. So, sure, I guess it's impressive if you screwed in a bunch of stuff with a hammer. But if you have a screwdriver, wouldn't you rather use the tool that it's made for? You know what I mean? Like that, I've never understood just swearing by one thing and one thing only. Because I think you're just selling yourself short and you're giving yourself more work. I mean, ArtRage Vitae so far has been perfect when it comes to, I want to put down a thick paint stroke and then I want to use a palette knife to scrape the edge and blend it into the canvas, and you know what I mean? And like the color mixing and it just works. That's what this is made for. Like ArtRage Vitae is made for the pushing and pulling of paint. And then I just can't get over, I'll see comments and stuff like, oh, you didn't paint the whole thing in the one program? Well, why are you hopping between? It's like, come on, man, just use the thing that works. Sure, you could make a 3D scene, in, Affinity Photo or whatever by painting but wouldn't it be easier to actually make 3D in Blender? You know what I mean? Like, just I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent, but still, use the tool that's right for the job. And the tool that, or the job that ArtRage is the perfect tool for, like I said, is just very, very good brushwork. I like brushwork. I like being able to see it. I like being able to do the push and pull. Values are a lot of fun simply because you get the darker color or value and you add just a little bit of lighter paint to it and it blends just like oils. It's great. It feels super responsive, and it's a lot of fun. But overall, I wanted to just really find a series of paintings to break in ArtRage with, and I'm glad I did, because there are slight differences. So I do think that ArtRage Vitae handles color a little bit better than ArtRage 6. What I mean by that is there's a mode in ArtRage, both in ArtRage 6 and ArtRage Vitae, called real color blending. And what that does is that mimics, basically it goes from working in additive light or additive color space, which means, really quick crash course, the difference between digital painting and traditional painting as far as colors are concerned is the more value you add in regards to different colors and stuff in digital, the lighter things become. So as you mix the prisms of the red, the green, and the blue, you mix all three of those at full blast, you get pure white. However, if you mix your red, your yellow, and your blue in paint, and you mix them all evenly, you get gray or black. So it's subtractive. You're removing light as you blend more colors. So the real color mode within ArtRage seems to mimic that pretty well. It did in ArtRage 6. The one thing I've noticed, and this might be correct, I don't know. I need to test this with actual oils. It mixes a lot of green, just out of nowhere. Like I'll have something and I'll have, I'll mix red and blue, and then whenever I first put them together, there's a green tint. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm no color expert, but and it's not a lot. It's not a lot. It's just like the highlights of an impasto or something. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if what it's doing is it's taking the complement of the color you're making, because the whole like green and purple, they're both transitionary colors. And what that means is they are made of equal parts a warm color and a cool color. So, I don't know. It's weird. So for this one, the mountain sketch that we're doing, I had the real color blending on. But for some of the later ones, I actually did the color blending off. The real color blending, I should say, that mode off. And it worked a little more like I'm used to with maybe a Photoshop or something like that. So that your mileage is going to vary on that. I do recommend trying it because you're going to get some really interesting results. I just don't know how one-to-one, like fully realism accurate that is. So if you're going in and your whole thing with ArtRage is, hey, this needs to mimic reality better than reality, I don't know if that's quite setting the right expectation. I think the real fun of ArtRage is going to come from experimenting and going in there and just doing stuff to see what happens. And I think what's so nice about it is it has, toolbox functionality. It has this functionality of being able to make canvas brushes and, palette knives and things like that. However, you're not completely overwhelmed with possibilities and options and stuff. Basically, with something like a brush designer that you have in here, which is just a custom brush area to where you can bring in your own brush tip and then start mixing with things like, and messing with levers like, how much loading of the paint is on the brush and how much paint thinner, quote unquote, are you adding to it. And basically that elongates the stroke to where as you put more pressure on, if you have more paint thinner, that's actually going to, up to a certain point, it's going to make that stroke a longer one before it starts to fall off. And then if you have a lot of loading, but then a little bit of paint thinner, it's going to be a very, very harsh impasto look, which I love. So you get that flexibility, you get that type of dimensionality that you would want, that you would just do exactly like. A perfect example is what I would do if I were to really mimic a workflow, and I kind of did it here actually, is the principle of fat over lean. And I know that really doesn't make sense digitally because there's no fat. Like, fat over lean is an oil painting term, and what that means is as you do more and more layers of paint, you want to add more and more oil mixing with your paint. So you would start off, maybe your underpainting is going to be super diluted, really thinned out paint, essentially like burnt sienna and stuff like that. You'll see a lot of classic painters, Rembrandts and Da Vinci and A lot of people do underpaintings for mirror. That's what they do. They're going to thin their paint out either with turpentine or some sort of medium, and then make it to where it's almost like a gloss or a wash of very little oil, keeping that, wetness and the viscosity and stuff there. So what that means is it dries quickly, or more quickly, I should say. Since it's oils and there's still traces of oil, it's still going to take a little bit to dry, but you have a really thin layer. And then your next layer might be let's say 3 parts thinner to 1 part paint. And then the next layer after that, you're going to do like half and half, 2 parts thinner, 2 parts paint. Then you work up after that to just pure paint out of the tube. And then after that, if you wanted to do some like details, you could actually add some sort of medium, a slow drying or a linseed oil or something. So basically you're adding more fat over that. So basically what that does for an oil painting is it makes sure that it does not crack. You're not putting something that, will never dry on the bottom and then layering stuff that dries on top. Because what ends up happening is oil paintings take like a year, maybe more, to fully dry. Now, touch dry is one thing, but to fully dry, to have all of the molecules completely dry, there's no moisture, takes upwards of a year, if not, I've heard of some paintings taking 3 or 4 years. What it does is it dries, it binds, and it holds. So fat over lean is a way that you want to make sure that your painting does not crack. If you go to the museum and you see a painting that wasn't done fat over lean, it's going to have cracks everywhere. That's where all those restoration experts have to come in and do all that stuff. Very time consuming, very expensive process. But what I like to do is take the mentality of fat over lean and use it in ArtRage. So I will actually take, custom brushes and put a lot of thinner on them to do my underpainting. That way the paint smooths, it's really smooth, it goes on quick, it's like very wet, almost like you're using a gouache or a stampy watercolor or something like that. And then the next time I kind of lower that thinner and I up the loading. And then the next layer, I do it again. And something that you might even notice on the ArtRage side of things, I didn't use but 1 layer, maybe 2. So whenever I think of layer in my mind, I don't actually think of physical hitting the new layer button on ArtRage or on Photoshop or whatever. I think of a layer as a pass. Like, I will do my first pass very loose, very shape driven, very value driven, maybe put in some color here and there, but that's not really important. Then the next pass, that's when I'll start integrating and doing like a color overlay or what have you. Then I merge it. So meaning once I merge it, in my mind, that's the same thing as my canvas is dry, right? Now I'm at this part. Now I'm locked in here. Now I'm gonna make a new layer or duplicate that dried layer and then put thicker paint on top of it. So yeah, it's a very kind of traditional way of thinking, but I think ArtRage is definitely up to the task. So there's a lot of tools. The functionality is great as usual. I love the fact that you can dock these windows. There is one thing, and maybe I might email Ambient Designs about this, but one thing that I am interested in, I wonder if there's a way to set a default toolbox. So what I mean is, whenever I load up ArtRage, I always have to go in, even though the toolbox panel, basically my set of brushes, my quote-unquote brush pack, as it were, the window is there, but there's no brushes that load in by default. And I wonder if there's a way that, like, either it can save your last it can save your last loadout, or you can customize a loadout and create it as a default. That way, every time I open up ArtRage, I can just make a new canvas and then all my stuff's there. Pretty much it's that way right now. Basically everything but the tools in the toolbox are loaded in by default. So it's very close and it's not bad. I just click like 2 buttons. Literally, I click the little menu panel on the toolbox and then go to load tools. And then it automatically goes back to my folder that I have my tools in. I double click that and then it loads them in just fine. So it's not a big deal, but it's just like one of those quality of life things that, you know, I'd like to see. It's not required by any means. I mean, it works really well as is. It loads them in just fine. These are tools that myself, I did some editing, but basically Daniel Ibanez, Mambobon here on YouTube. I actually have his page is linked on my page, I think. Great ArtRage painter, awesome. His name's even in the credits for ArtRage Vitae as being a beta tester. So you know it's in good hands. They're getting the ArtRage masters to be able to do this stuff, you know. So, but yeah. So a lot of those tools, they work great. In my opinion, they even work faster and maybe a little better and smoother than they did in ArtRage 6, which I already got used to. ArtRage 6, it wasn't like there's a ton of lag or anything. That's not the case. It's just ArtRage Vitae is a little snappier. And I wonder if it's just, you know, they've had some years to kind of look at feedback and, you know, graphics stuff has changed and the way their API can go into the different visual infrastructures and stuff like that. Basically, it can better use the assets of your computer, and computers are better now than they were 5 years ago. You know what I mean? And like the way the engineering team and the architecture of it, it's more streamlined. It loads faster. Zooming works great. So that was actually one of the bugs that I had. Is I have 3 monitors, and one of the bugs that I had is on my main monitor, meaning my default monitor in the display settings. It's monitor number 1, but the touch monitor, the monitor you guys are seeing right now, is monitor number 3. In my device manager. So on panel 1, the zoom function worked great. But if I moved it to panel 2 or panel 3, the zoom function with a mouse wheel stopped working, which is really weird. They already fixed it. So by the time this comes out, by the time you get your hands on ArtRage Vitae, that's going to be fixed. And then another one that I ran into was if I used a reference picture, so you can basically pin a reference image. And literally it's cool because it's like a little push pin that you can drag around and stuff, but basically you can scale in, scale out, and you can use it for color picking. And basically what I ran into was if you color pick from your reference image panel, and then you would paint and you could keep doing that. But then if you tried to color pick from your canvas, like from your art, like let's say you really love a color that you got mixed somehow on your canvas, and then you tried color picking with the Alt button with the eyedropper, it wouldn't color pick anymore. So it's like that the reference image tool overrode any other color picking, but they already fixed that as well. So those were the 2 that I ran into. Just for transparency's sake, I just wanted to mention those. But yeah, they're already fixed. Ambient Design's just like, all right, we got it, brother. And then, yeah, within 2 days, literally within 48 hours, it was completely fixed, plus like 5 or 6 other things that I guess were requested on forums or Reddit or something like that with some of the early access. So they're on the ball with this thing, and it's a lot of fun. Like I said, I know this kind of seems like a big overview or like an actual formal review, but it's not. I still want to give it a few months. I really want to kind of put this thing through its paces, and it has a whole lot of pros, not a lot of cons, but you got to know what you're getting into whenever it comes to ArtRage and Rebel and softwares like this that try to mimic a style that it's very traditional in nature. They do not work the same as what you may be used to with something like a Clip Studio Paint or Photoshop or Affinity Photo or whatever. Yeah, a lot of fun. I'm liking it. Just know I'm liking it. It's cool. It's taking all the stuff I liked about ArtRage 6. It's just improving upon it, making it faster. I want to dig into more of the nitty gritty. With ArtRage, it was one of those that I just kind of loaded it up. I did a few things and then I left. With ArtRage Vitae, I want to put it through more of its paces. I want to try a little bit of everything, really see what the functionality is. Something that I do want to look at, I know they've added some more canvas editing tools. So not necessarily like texture and stuff. I mean, or I shouldn't say canvas editing. I should say document editing. To where it's like free transforms and, you know, lasso tools and text tools, you know, that type of thing. They've added more of those. So I want to see what those are about. I really want to get in there and put those through their paces, because I don't want ArtRage to have, you know, the functionality of Photoshop. Like, that's just not realistic. That's not what this is. Like we said, use the right tool for the job. I would rather ArtRage continue focusing as they are on the traditional painting feel and how lovely those blends work and the palette knives, and like that stuff's just so exciting and so fun and so fresh that I want them all hands on deck nailing that like they have been. I don't care if they don't have, well, where's the match color tool? Where's the high pass filter? Like, nah, get out of here. Like, you don't need a noise filter. You don't need any of that stuff. Not with ArtRage. Take a thing in ArtRage, paint it, and then take it into Photoshop like I did here. And then do whatever editing you might need to do, whether it's color dodges or all that stuff, you know. I mean, you can do color dodge and things like that in ArtRage. It's just I have a way more familiarity with that in Photoshop. So that's what I usually do. I will start a painting and do a lot of the structural stuff in another painting program, then take something into Photoshop, do final touches, do another brush pass, that type of thing. And then see how it goes from there. But I'm interested for you all to get your hands on ArtRage Vitae. I'm not sure the exact release date. By the time this goes up, it might already be out. I don't know. So I believe this is coming out for Windows and Mac. So on Windows, it's actually purchased on the Microsoft Store, which is interesting. I think this is going to help Ambient Designs do some update stuff in the way that it's built in. I think it's interesting. I had to go through the Microsoft Store and do my purchase there. So I want to see how updates work. I had to do an update because of those bug fixes that I discussed earlier. But what I had to do is I had to reload the page on the Microsoft Store. I didn't really see a way inside of ArtRage Vitae to do an update, but that might be something that after formal release, you know, whenever you load up ArtRage Vitae, it may ask, hey, do you want to look for updates? That's kind of what ArtRage 6 did, is it would say, hey, do you want to view updates? And then you click yes, and then it does a quick online ping, and then it came back with a thing in ArtRage 6, and it was like, oh, there's no updates found. So they're probably going to add something like that to ArtRage Vitae. I don't know if the Microsoft Store allows them to do that. I don't know. That's a whole different can of worms. But that's just another thing I'm kind of scratching my beard on, like, do I have to load up the Microsoft Store once a week and see if there's a new update? You know, I don't know. Normally there's like an about. If you click about ArtRage, and then normally programs have something to where it's like, look for updates or version number or, you know, whatever. So we'll see. But yeah, overall, liking it a lot. It feels good. I like painting on it. It's fun. And that's the most important part. If I'm doing this for a living, if I do this day in and day out, I gotta have fun while I'm doing it. And ArtRage definitely lets me have fun mixing paint, seeing some happy accidents, you know, making cool landscapes, doing my inner gothic Bob Ross. Now I'm just thinking of Bob Ross with like white face makeup on. He looks like the Crow. You know, he has the like goth like teardrop like black fingernail polish. That'd be so rad. Oh man. But anyway, that's my time. Yeah, you guys take care. I'm looking forward to you guys getting your hands on ArtRage Vitae. Can't wait to see what you guys make with it. And let me know what you think of the landscape stuff in the comments. Like I said, I do have prints available. Go check those out. But you know where to find me. You can find me here. You can find me on Twitter and Insta and all that fun stuff. ArtStation and all that fun. So until next time, gang, take care. Go make cool stuff. And we'll see you next time. Bye.